So yesterday I decided to cut out of my surroundings for at least a day because I was getting stressed and overwhelmed. And so I had these somewhat makeshift plans. I figured, I always go to Buffalo. I'll go to Syracuse. And so I head out. I stop for gas, and I'm like, I can feel the stress, like I can't settle down no matter what I do. I'm like, I really, really need to get away. And so I stop to get gas, and, I'm just like looking around, and I see, the letter I flashes a little at me, and I'm like, avoiding. And so I get down the road, I'm traveling along, I'm listening to the radio, and then I see Montezuma Wildlife Park. And then I'm going, yeah, I think I've drove past this place before, but I have never gone into this park or even checked out this, but today is not the day. And so I continue to drive, and then I come up to another sign that says Hiawatha Boulevard. And then I'm like, oh, I just want to get to where I'm going at this point. So along the ride, I listened to this talk show where this history professor from Stanford University is giving the overall historical view of the Taliban. And after his show is over with, there's another talk show, and he's, cutting down Biden. And, it doesn't matter what president does what. They can never just say, these people inherited a mess, and they're doing the best that they can under the circumstances in which they were placed in. Nobody can say that. It drives me nuts. Stop your negative chatter, and, if you think you can do it better, then go for the running of the president. Otherwise, shut your mouth. That's my opinion. You want to criticize, wait till the guy's out of office, see what he does while he's in office, wait till he's out of the office, and then, his term's over, then cut him down all you want. But while he's in, show some respect, okay? So, going back to the Stanford University professor, which I didn't catch his name. He was talking kind of choppy, and I was having a hard time following him, but he goes back as far as the 70s with the Taliban, but the Taliban has been around since ancient history, okay? It's not like the Taliban just, materialized out of nowhere. They have been around much longer than the United States. And it's, the formation of the United States, the Taliban had already been formulated long before the United States was ever around. I mean, they date back to ancient history. I even think they go back to the story of the five with I, okay? I'll give you as much of the story as I can remember. So there were these 5 men that were in disagreement with what was going on in their surroundings, and they were from another country. And the things that were happening to not only the people in their community, but their friends and their own family, they were ready to take action on those things. But they decided to wait for a day before they made any type of irrational movement. And so they sat around with each other. There's 5 of them. And they started drinking. And they drank a lot of alcohol. And so no one knows for sure if they actually died or they reached the point of spiritual separation prior to death. But they traveled quite a distance and they ended up in the presence of I. And they stood there amongst I and the Iroquois and they said, we've never seen people like this before. We definitely, either this is a dream or, you know, let's just ignore what we're seeing with these people and let's just keep walking and let's, hopefully we'll wake up, okay? So they start walking and they get up over this hill and they see, it's almost like a tabletop, but it's huge. A round rock, flat round rock. And so they get to this flat round rock and they see that there's 8 people laying on their back around this rock. And so they check them to see if they're alive or not. And they're not making any type of movement. It doesn't appear that they're breathing or anything. And so they're like, well, we can't just leave them here. You know, we got to let somebody know what we found. And so one of them volunteers to go back down over the hill to let the people that they had just passed know that what they had found. And so that he can find the location, he tells the 4 men, there's 8 of them, for every 2 you stand in between, you know, every 2 stand up in between, you know, those people. So they have 4 men standing up, 8 men laying down. There's a total of 12, okay? So the guy goes down over the hill. He can tell I is the leader of these people. And so he goes directly to him and he says, you know, I found something that I need to show you. You know, I think it's your people. You need to, you know, put some action around it. And so they follow him up. I ushers to a few of his people and they follow him up over this hill. And so I just stands there and his people stand with him. And this guy couldn't believe that they didn't go, oh gosh, look what you found. Oh, thank you. Like, what's going on here? Like, you know. And so the 4 continue to stand where they were standing in between the 8. And the guy that came up over the hill stands right in the middle of the rock and he says, why aren't you doing anything? I mean, these are your people. They look like you. They're dressed like you. They're not breathing. There's something wrong here. Why aren't you making any movement with your own people? And I and the men that he brought with him, they just continue to look at him. And so the guy in the middle of the rock, he's getting really, really mad and frustrated. And all of a sudden he stops and he says, why did you leave your son down below? And I turns around, walks away from his men as if he's going to leave. And then he bends down with his hands close to his knees. And he starts laughing really, really loud. And continues to laugh and laugh and laugh. And then finally he turns around and he tells his men to, you know, get others, you know, pick up the 8 and, you know, make them healthy again, get them back on their feet. And then he calls up some really strong men to move the rock. And so they move the rock, not all the way, but enough, like halfway. And then Hiawatha climbs up and climbs out and just stands there and stares at his father. And I says, I'm going to give you 50 of my best men. And I'm going to assign them to you. And I want you to bring these 5 that found their way here back to where they're sitting somewhere else. And after you make them whole again, I want you to come home. So these 50 warriors come up. And warriors are always poised in position to leave at a single glance, okay? So they're ready. Hiawatha, other than being a little hungry, he was definitely fit. So they lead these 5 men back, and they find the precise location of where they had consumed all this alcohol, and they had died. And then Hiawatha and the 50 were able to revive them using their ways. And when they came completely through, Hiawatha said, "From this day forward, you will always be known as the Taliban."